So our first step for finding outliers is to multiply our IQR by 1.5. Now recall that we just found our IQR and it's 17. So multiplied by 1.5, we get 25.5. We're not done yet. What we have to do now is construct a relationship between our Q1 and this number that we just found by subtracting. So Q1 minus this value here, 25.5. Our Q1, remember, was 11. Gives us negative 14.5. So let's go to our data set and see if we find any values less than negative 14.5. We don't, so there are no outliers on the low end. Let's check that high end. So we have our Q3, which is 28. This time we're going to add 25.5, and we're going to get 53.5. Are there values greater than 53.5? Well, if we look at our data set, indeed there are. 56, 67, 70, and 121 are all outliers. So we have 4 outliers on the high end. We just successfully found our 4 outliers for our data set. Now what we want to do is construct a box and whisker plot so that we can see this data more visually. Our first step is order numbers from least to greatest. We've already completed that. Step 2, find your 5-number summary, minimum, Q1, median, Q3, and maximum. We also already did that. Q3, we just finished checking for outliers, so we're ready to move on to step 4. On the number line, construct a rectangle from your Q1 to Q3. I'll show you what this looks like. So I've already constructed my number line. Pause the video and take a second to construct a number line for yourself. I want you to follow along and make this box plot as I make it with you. So if you look and recall, our Q1 is 11 and our Q3 is 28. So we just need to construct a rectangle from 11 to 28. And we can draw our rectangle. Our first step is complete. Our next step is to mark a vertical line at the median of your data set. So if you remember, our median was 17.5. So I will go to my 17.5 on the number line, which we can estimate to be around here, and I will draw a vertical line to represent this median. Our sixth step is to extend whiskers to the smallest number that is not an outlier and the largest number that is not an outlier. So recall we had no outliers on our low end, but we did have outliers on our high end. So the last number we want to extend our whisker out to is going to be 42 on the high end, but we can go all the way down to 9 on our low end. So 9 we can estimate to be about here, and 42 we can estimate to be about here. Oh, I broke my pencil. And so I extend my whiskers. We're almost done. Our final step for our box plot is to mark outliers with a star or a dot of some sort. So let's do this on our graph. So remember, we had 4 outliers. The first one was at 56, so we can mark a point here. 67, 70, and 121. And so you can see exactly how your data is being pulled out to the right. Now, as with our previous distributions we looked at, we always want to CUS and BS, describe our center, unusual features, spread, and shape of a box plot. And actually, it's even easier with a box plot when you're looking at it. So let's take a moment and just jot down our notes before we put it in context. So our center is the median of 17.5. Our unusual features. We do have 4 outliers. And they're high. Now let's look at spread. Now, you might be tempted to use range, but again, we want to move towards greater sophistication. We have a Q1 and Q3 that gave us our interquartile range. So you can see our interquartile range here. IQR is a measure of spread. So we do want to use our IQR to describe this data set. And so our spread, we can say our IQR is 7. And lastly, our shape. Shape might be the hardest thing to figure out about a box plot. It can help if we think about our quartiles a little bit. Remember, this is my median, Q1, Q3, min, and technically this is my new max now that we are excluding these outliers. Remember, between our Q1 and Q3, we have exactly 50% of our data. And in fact, between our minimum and Q3, we have 75% of our data. Most of our data is here with some pulling off to the right. So when we can describe the shape of this data, we're going to say it's right skewed. Most of my data is to the left, around between 10 and 42 even. And then I have a few data points that are really dragging it up towards the right. So we know that this is a right skewed shape. Now, it isn't enough just to write out center 17.5, spread 7. You got to put it in context. So let's get a little bit more practice doing that. I want you to take a minute, pause the video, and write how you would describe the center, unusual features, spread, and shape in the context of this problem. Remember, we're talking about the 2016 medal count for the highest performing 30 countries in the world. So I want you to pause the video, take a minute, write out your response. I'll write out mine, and you'll be able to compare. So compare your response with mine. I wrote, the median of the distribution is 17.5 medals earned over the Olympic Games in 2016. The distribution is right skewed, with 4 outliers on the high end at 56, 67, 70, and 121. The middle 50% earned between 11 and 28 medals during the games. The IQR is 17. You see, I talked about center, unusual features, spread, and shape, but I was specific. I made it in the context of the data I was observing. Now, one thing I've forgotten to do is label this box and whisker plot, and you should always label your graphs. This is 2016 medal counts by country. And so now you know exactly what this box plot actually represents. We've learned a lot in the past lesson. We've learned how to find the median, how to make a 5-number summary, how to find outliers, and construct a dot plot. So we've done a lot. Why box plots? They don't show as much detail as a histogram, stem plot, or dot plot, but they allow us to compare the distributions easily. And that brings us to our homework. Your homework is to construct parallel box plots. The question is, who texts more, men or women? The following data shows the number of texts sent and received for male and female students in a statistics class over a 2-day period. Construct 2 parallel box plots and describe and compare the distribution for men and women based on the graphs. Who do you think texts more? So you will probably need to go back to the steps for constructing box plots in this video. Scroll back to do that. You will also want to make sure you have this data so that you can work with the data. You will want to set up your number line to look something like this. Of course, it should go from 0 to your highest number based on the data set. And you'll want to have a box plot for your men drawn over the number line and a box plot for women. This way you'll be able to compare exactly where their medians fall, their maximums and minimums in relationship to each other. Get started. I can't wait to see what products you come up with when you bring them to class on the next day. And make sure to comment on the videos on the YouTube comment section.